Henry and Margaret had been together for longer than most people could imagine. They had met when they were teenagers in a small town where everyone knew everyone else. Henry remembered the first time he saw her. She was sitting on the steps of the local library reading a book with a look so focused that it seemed like the world around her didn't exist. He had been curious, shy, and awkward, but something about her drew him in. He started finding excuses to pass by the library, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, and before long they started talking. Their conversations were simple at first, about school, friends, and the little things that teenagers notice. But slowly, over months and years, they discovered a connection that neither of them could ignore. By the time they were in their early 20s, they were inseparable. They shared dreams, worries, and hopes for the future. Everyone around them thought they were the perfect couple. They got married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and friends. It wasn't a grand wedding, but it was full of love, laughter, and a sense of hope that carried them into the years ahead. Life, of course, wasn't always easy. They had struggles. Money was tight at times, and there were days when work and responsibilities weighed heavily on both of them. But they had each other, and somehow that made every problem a little smaller, every challenge a little easier to face. Henry loved Margaret deeply. He loved the way she laughed, the way she listened, and the way she made even ordinary days feel special. He thought he knew everything about her. After all, they had spent decades side by side. But the truth was, there were parts of Margaret that Henry had never truly seen, parts of her life that she had kept carefully hidden, not out of dishonesty, but out of a desire to protect both herself and him. It wasn't that she had secrets to hide in a negative sense. She had lived experiences, adventures, and moments that she had simply never shared. And Henry, devoted and loving as he was, had never even guessed that these hidden parts existed. Their home was modest, filled with decades of memories. The living room had shelves of photographs, showing moments from when their children were young to holidays they had taken together. There were trinkets and souvenirs from places they had visited, books they had read together, and small pieces of art that Margaret had collected over the years. Every corner of the house told a story of a life built together with care, love, and quiet resilience. Yet among all these memories, there was one story that Henry had no idea about. The story of Margaret's life before him, the parts she had chosen to keep to herself, and the moments that had shaped her in ways he had never imagined. One afternoon, as Henry was dusting the shelves, he noticed a small envelope tucked behind some old photo albums. It was yellowed with age and had a simple handwriting on the front that he didn't immediately recognize. Curious, he picked it up and carefully opened it. Inside were letters, some written in languages he didn't understand, others in a neat script he vaguely recognized from Margaret's younger years. There were photographs of places he had never been, and of people he had never met. At first he was confused. Who were these people? Where had Margaret been that he had never known about? A small knot of worry formed in his stomach. Had she been hiding something important from him all this time? Henry didn't confront her immediately. He felt a mixture of curiosity and hesitation. Margaret had always been private about certain things, and he respected her privacy. But he couldn't ignore the fact that here, in his own home, was evidence of a life that he had never been part of, a life that she had somehow managed to keep separate from their shared story. Over the next few days, Henry found himself thinking about the letters constantly. He wondered what had led Margaret to keep these experiences to herself. He wondered if she had been afraid, proud, or simply unwilling to complicate their life together. And most of all, he wondered what it all meant for their relationship now. After so many years together, Henry and Margaret's life together had been quiet in many ways, but it was filled with small joys that made each day meaningful. They had a simple routine. Mornings spent reading the newspaper and drinking coffee together. Afternoons sometimes spent tending to their small garden or taking walks through the neighborhood. And evenings often filled with shared meals and conversation. They had seen their children grow up, move out, and start families of their own. They had celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, and holidays with friends and relatives. From the outside, it looked like the life of any other couple who had grown old together. But Henry was starting to realize that even after decades, there were depths to Margaret that he had never fully explored. It wasn't just about the letters or the photographs. It was about understanding who Margaret truly was in every sense. He remembered small things from their past, the way she would sometimes disappear for hours without explanation, the stories she had hinted at but never fully told. The trips she had taken that he had assumed were simple errands or visits to friends. Now looking back, he realized that there had always been hints of a world he had never seen. Margaret had a quiet strength, a resilience, and a sense of adventure that he had always admired but never fully understood. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sun set, Henry felt a mix of emotions. Love, admiration, curiosity, and a little fear. He wanted to know more, but he also wanted to approach the subject carefully. He didn't want to upset Margaret or make her feel like he was judging her. He simply wanted to understand her, to see the full picture of the woman he had spent a lifetime with. The thought that he might have only scratched the surface of who she really was made him feel both humble and amazed. After 60 years together, he realized that marriage could hold mysteries, even for the closest of partners. Henry decided that he would wait for the right moment to talk to Margaret. He didn't want to rush her or make her feel uncomfortable. He simply wanted to listen, to hear her stories in her own words, and to finally understand the experiences that had shaped her into the remarkable woman he had always loved. In the meantime, he kept the letters and photographs safely tucked away, pondering the life that had unfolded before him without his knowledge. He imagined the adventures she had had, the challenges she had faced, and the courage it must have taken for her to live the life she had before and alongside him. As the days passed, Henry's curiosity grew stronger, but so did his sense of admiration. He realized that Margaret's secrecy wasn't a betrayal. It was a reflection of her character. She had lived fully, bravely, and selflessly, without needing recognition or validation. And now, after 60 years of marriage, Henry was beginning to understand that love didn't require knowing every detail about a person. Sometimes love was about accepting the mystery, cherishing the journey, and appreciating the depth that each person brought into a shared life. By the time the week ended, Henry felt ready to gently approach Margaret. He wanted to talk to her not as a husband demanding answers, but as a partner eager to learn, to connect, and to understand. He wanted to hear her stories not out of obligation, but out of genuine curiosity and deep respect. The discovery of the letters had opened a door, and Henry was ready to step through it, hand in hand with the woman he had loved for more than 6 decades. He knew that whatever he learned, his admiration and love for her would only grow stronger. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the evening shadows grew long, Henry felt a quiet sense of anticipation. He realized that life, even after 60 years of marriage, could still surprise you. He realized that every person carries layers of history, courage, and adventure that may remain unseen. And he realized that Margaret, the woman he thought he knew completely, was even more remarkable than he had ever imagined. Their story was far from over. In fact, it was entering a new chapter, one filled with discovery, understanding, and a love that was deeper than ever before. After finding the old wooden box in the attic, Henry couldn't stop thinking about it. The box had been tucked away behind some dusty blankets and old suitcases, almost as if it had been hiding from the world, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. The small hand-painted letters on the lid read, "MM do not open," and Henry had wondered for a long time who MM could be. He knew Margaret had always been private, but now he was faced with proof that there was a part of her life he had never been allowed to see. Henry spent a few days staring at the box, turning it over in his hands, feeling the weight of the wood, and running his fingers over the letters. Curiosity battled with respect. He didn't want to invade Margaret's privacy, but the urge to know what was inside grew stronger every day. He thought about their life together, how long they had been married and how close they had been. He had always believed he knew her completely, but this box challenged everything he thought he knew. It felt like a door to a world he had never been invited to enter. Finally, one quiet afternoon, when Margaret had gone to the garden to water her flowers, Henry took a deep breath and opened the box. Inside, he found stacks of letters tied with ribbons, old photographs, and several worn notebooks. The smell of old paper filled his nostrils, a mix of dust and memories. He opened the first letter and began to read. The handwriting was neat and precise, but there was a confidence in the words that Henry had never noticed in Margaret's everyday conversations. The letter was addressed to a relief organization in Europe, and it talked about helping families displaced by war. Henry felt a lump in his throat. He had no idea Margaret had been involved in anything like this. He carefully went through more letters, each one revealing more of a life that had remained hidden. There were photographs of Margaret standing with children who looked like they had just survived something terrible, images of towns she had visited, and certificates from organizations thanking her for her volunteer work. Some of the letters were from people she had helped directly, expressing gratitude for her courage and kindness. Henry felt a mixture of pride, awe, and a little sadness. He had loved Margaret all these years, but he realized that there were sides of her he had never seen. Adventures she had taken without telling him. Risks she had faced alone. Among the photographs, Henry found a few that made him pause. One showed Margaret on a boat, smiling at the camera, wearing a hat that looked like it belonged to a traveler. Another showed her in a small European town, talking to people who seemed relieved and grateful. He couldn't understand why she had never told him about these trips. He remembered the time she had gone away for a few days, saying it was for work or visiting a friend, but now he wondered if there had been more to those journeys. He realized that Margaret had led a remarkable life before and alongside their marriage, one that Henry had never been part of, and he felt both amazed and humbled. Henry decided to take some of the letters and photographs to the living room and spread them out on the table. He wanted to look at them more carefully, to try to understand the full story of Margaret's secret life. Each letter told a piece of the puzzle, stories of helping orphans, organizing relief efforts, and working with people in dangerous situations. Margaret had been careful to keep these activities separate from her life with Henry. She hadn't wanted to worry him or involve him in the risks she was taking. Now, looking at the evidence, Henry could see her courage and determination shining through every word, every photograph. As he continued to read, Henry felt a growing sense of admiration. Margaret had always been kind and thoughtful, but this was something entirely different. She had been brave in ways he could never have imagined. She had faced challenges that he had no knowledge of, and had made sacrifices without ever seeking recognition. Henry realized that Margaret had a sense of purpose that went beyond their family, beyond their home, beyond anything he had ever fully understood. She had quietly shaped the lives of others, and now he was seeing the evidence of that work for the first time. Henry's mind raced with questions, but he knew he needed to approach this carefully. He didn't want Margaret to feel hurt, judged, or exposed. She had shared a lifetime with him, and he had been unaware of this part of her journey. He understood that she had her reasons for keeping it hidden. Perhaps she had thought he wouldn't understand, or perhaps she simply wanted to protect their life together from unnecessary complications. Whatever the reason, Henry felt a deep respect for her choice and a growing curiosity to learn more directly from her. That evening, when Margaret returned from the garden, Henry waited until they were sitting together on the couch before he mentioned the box. "I found something in the attic today," he said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. Margaret looked up, a slight flicker of concern in her eyes. Henry continued, "It's a box, with letters and photographs. I didn't open it until now." He paused, watching her reaction. She didn't look angry or upset, only quiet and thoughtful. Margaret nodded slowly. "I was wondering when you'd find that," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of vulnerability there. She had always been proud of her work, but she had also been careful to keep it separate from her life with Henry. "I never wanted to scare you or make you worry. It was my life before we were together, and part of it continued alongside our life. But I always thought it was better to keep it private." Henry reached for her hand, feeling the warmth and softness he had known for decades. "I don't feel scared," he said. "I feel amazed. I had no idea, Margaret. This is incredible. I can't believe you did all of this and never told me." He squeezed her hand gently. "I'm proud of you, and I want to know everything. I want to understand who you really are, every part of you." Margaret smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and tenderness. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "Some of those times were dangerous. I had to be careful about who knew what I was doing. And I didn't want to risk our life together. I wanted you to have a safe, happy life, even if it meant keeping this side of me hidden." Henry listened, feeling a new layer of understanding open between them. He realized that her secrecy wasn't about mistrust or shame. It was about love, protection, and responsibility. Over the next few days, Henry and Margaret began to talk more about her past. She told him stories that went beyond the letters and photographs. Moments of fear, moments of triumph, and moments of quiet satisfaction that she had never shared. She spoke of families she had helped, children she had supported, and communities she had tried to rebuild. She shared memories of traveling alone in countries she barely knew, navigating challenges that most people could never imagine. Henry listened, sometimes in awe, sometimes with tears in his eyes. Henry began to understand that Margaret had always been more than he realized. She had a strength that had quietly guided their family through life, a courage that had faced dangers without complaint, and a kindness that had reached far beyond their home. He realized that loving someone doesn't always mean knowing every detail about them. Sometimes love means trusting, respecting, and appreciating the parts of a person that remain unseen. Margaret's life had been full of hidden heroism, and Henry felt grateful to finally witness even a fraction of it. In the evenings, they would sit together and look through the letters and photographs. Margaret explained who the people were, what the situations had been, and why she had made certain choices. Henry asked questions, sometimes simple, sometimes deep, and she answered with honesty and care. It was as if a new chapter of their relationship was unfolding, one where curiosity, admiration, and love were intertwined. Henry realized that this discovery had not only revealed Margaret's past, it had deepened their present and strengthened their bond in ways he had never expected. By the end of the week, Henry felt a sense of awe and gratitude. Margaret's life had been remarkable, brave, and selfless. She had made a difference in the world without seeking recognition or reward. And now, after all these years, Henry was finally seeing the full picture of the woman he had loved for more than 60 years. He knew that their story was far from ordinary, that it was filled with layers of complexity, courage, and humanity, and he understood that even after a lifetime together, there were always new discoveries to be made, new depths to explore, and new reasons to admire the person he had chosen to spend his life with. As Henry continued to explore the letters and photographs, he realized that Margaret's life before him and even during their marriage was far more extraordinary than he had ever imagined. Every piece of paper, every photograph, every faded note told a story of courage, kindness, and quiet heroism. Henry had always admired Margaret for her warmth, her intelligence, and her patience, but now he was beginning to see that she had a strength and bravery that had remained hidden even from him for decades. One afternoon, Henry brought a stack of photographs to the dining table. He carefully spread them out, noticing the small details that revealed more about Margaret's hidden life. There were pictures of her standing in refugee camps, smiling at children whose faces told stories of loss and hope. There were photographs of her in crowded streets, helping distribute food and medicine, and images of her working with local communities to rebuild homes destroyed by natural disasters. Henry was struck by the fact that she had done all of this without ever mentioning it to him. Margaret entered the room quietly and saw the photographs spread across the table. She sat down beside him, her hands folded on her lap, and Henry looked at her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "I never knew," he said softly. "I had no idea you had done all this." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Margaret took a deep breath, her eyes reflecting both pride and a little sadness. "I wanted you to have a normal life, Henry," she said. "I didn't want to burden you with the dangers, the stress, or the things I had to face. I wanted our life together to be peaceful, safe, and filled with love. My work was important, but our life was important too." Henry reached for her hand, feeling the familiar warmth and comfort he had known for decades. "I understand that now," he said. "But I also want to know everything. I want to hear the stories, even the difficult ones. I want to understand the person you really are." Margaret smiled faintly, realizing that Henry's curiosity came not from judgment, but from love and respect. She began to speak, telling him about her experiences in detail, sharing moments of danger, moments of hope, and moments of quiet satisfaction that she had never shared before. She told him about a time when she had traveled alone to a small town in Europe that had been devastated by war. She had worked with local families to provide food, clothing, and medical assistance, often navigating dangerous conditions and uncertain situations. She spoke of nights spent in crowded shelters, comforting children who had lost everything, and of the satisfaction she felt when a family finally had a safe place to sleep. Henry listened intently, imagining the courage it must have taken for Margaret to face those situations alone. He realized that the woman he had married was not only kind and loving, but also incredibly brave. Margaret continued to share stories of her life before and during their marriage. She spoke of helping rebuild schools that had been destroyed, organizing relief missions in remote areas, and working with people who had been forgotten by the world. Henry could hardly believe that she had done all of this quietly, without seeking recognition or reward. He felt a deep sense of pride and admiration for her, but also a twinge of regret that he had not known sooner. He realized that even after 60 years of marriage, there were parts of Margaret he had never truly understood. As they talked, Henry began to see patterns in Margaret's choices. She had always been generous, patient, and selfless, not only in her public acts of kindness but also in the small, everyday decisions she made for their family. She had managed to balance her secret life with their life together, ensuring that he and their children never felt the burden of her work. Henry realized that her bravery extended beyond her adventures. It was also in her ability to love and protect her family while making a difference in the world. One evening, as they sat together in their living room, Henry asked Margaret about the moments that had been the most difficult for her. Margaret paused, her eyes distant, and then began to speak. She told him about nights when she had worried for the safety of the families she was helping, about times when she had faced rejection or hostility, and about moments when she had questioned whether her efforts would ever make a difference. Henry listened, feeling a mixture of sorrow and admiration. He could hardly imagine facing the challenges she had confronted, let alone doing so with such determination and grace. Henry also began to notice how Margaret's experiences had shaped their life together in subtle ways. Her patience, her empathy, and her resilience had influenced the way she managed their household, raised their children, and nurtured their relationships. He realized that the strength he had always admired in her wasn't just natural. It had been honed through years of facing difficult situations, making tough decisions, and putting others before herself. Henry felt a renewed sense of appreciation for the life they had built together, knowing that it had been guided by a woman of extraordinary courage and character. As the days went by, Henry and Margaret spent more time going through the letters, photographs, and documents in the wooden box. Each item revealed a new facet of Margaret's life, and each story deepened Henry's understanding of the woman he loved. Margaret spoke of friendships she had formed with people she had never told him about, of mentors who had guided her, and of moments when she had had to rely solely on her own instincts. Henry felt like he was discovering a whole new side of his wife, one that was both familiar and astonishingly new. Henry realized that loving someone for a lifetime did not mean knowing every detail about them. People were complex, layered, and full of experiences that could remain hidden even from the closest partners. Margaret's life was a testament to that complexity, a life filled with courage, compassion, and quiet heroism. Henry felt humbled by her strength, grateful for her honesty, and inspired by her dedication to making a difference in the world. He knew that their relationship had entered a new stage, one where curiosity, admiration, and mutual respect would play an even greater role. Margaret also began to see Henry in a new light. She realized that he was willing to embrace her fully, to accept her past without judgment, and to admire her for the person she truly was. Their conversations became more open, more honest, and more meaningful. They laughed together about memories from the letters, shared tears over the hardships Margaret had faced, and marveled at the impact she had made on so many lives. Henry understood that their bond had always been strong, but now it was strengthened by a deeper understanding of each other's experiences and choices. By the end of the week, Henry felt a profound sense of gratitude. Margaret had shared parts of her life that she had kept hidden for decades, and in doing so, she had allowed him to see the true depth of her character. He realized that love was not about knowing everything, but about trusting, respecting, and appreciating the full humanity of the person you cared for. Margaret's courage, kindness, and resilience had always been present, but now Henry could see them clearly, and it made him love her even more. As they sat together one evening, looking at the photographs and reading the letters, Henry felt a sense of awe. Margaret's life had been extraordinary, and he had been fortunate to witness it, even if only now. He understood that her past had not been hidden out of secrecy, but out of love and protection. She had balanced her own ambitions and courage with the life they had built together, ensuring that their marriage remained a safe and loving space. Henry realized that this balance, this quiet heroism, was part of what made Margaret so remarkable. The more Henry learned, the more he appreciated the complexity of human life. He understood that everyone carried hidden stories, moments of courage, and experiences that might never be fully revealed. Margaret had chosen to share hers with him now, and he felt honored and privileged. He knew that this newfound understanding would change the way he saw their life together. It was not a loss of innocence or a revelation of deception. It was a gift, a chance to know the person he had loved for over 60 years more fully and deeply than ever before. By the time Part 3 concluded, Henry and Margaret had grown closer than ever. The letters and photographs had opened a door to a new level of intimacy, trust, and understanding. Henry had discovered that even after decades of marriage, there were layers to the person he loved that he had never seen. Margaret had shown him that bravery, kindness, and resilience could coexist with love and family life. Together, they were embarking on a new chapter, one filled with stories, reflections, and a deeper appreciation for the extraordinary woman Margaret had always been. Henry couldn't stop thinking about everything he had learned about Margaret. Every time he looked at her, he saw someone familiar yet completely new. He had loved her for decades, but now he realized that love could deepen in ways he had never imagined. The discovery of her hidden life, her courage, and her selflessness had changed the way he saw their entire life together. It was as if a new layer had been added to the story he thought he already knew, and Henry felt both amazed and humbled by it. He began to reflect on their marriage in a way he never had before. He remembered their early years, the struggles, the laughter, the arguments, and the quiet evenings spent together. Now he understood that Margaret's strength had always been part of their life, even if he had never seen it clearly. Her patience, her kindness, and her ability to face challenges quietly had shaped their family and their home in ways he had never appreciated fully. Every decision she had made, every sacrifice had been guided by a strength that he was only now beginning to recognize. Henry realized that he had sometimes taken Margaret for granted. He had assumed he knew everything about her because they had been married for so long. But now he saw that people carry hidden depths, that even the closest partners might never fully understand. Margaret had chosen what to share and what to keep private, and he respected that more than ever. He began to feel a renewed sense of admiration for her, not just for the things she had done in secret, but for the way she had lived her life, thoughtfully, courageously, and with love. He also started thinking about the small ways Margaret's experiences had influenced their daily life. He noticed how patient she had always been with their children, how she handled difficult situations calmly, and how she had managed to create a loving home despite the challenges they had faced. Henry realized that her hidden life of courage and service had given her a strength that shaped every part of their family's life. He felt grateful for the quiet heroism that had always been present, even if he hadn't recognized it before. As the days passed, Henry found himself wanting to know more, not just about Margaret's past, but about the choices she had made and the lessons she had learned. He would sit with her in the evenings, asking questions and listening intently as she shared stories of her adventures, the people she had met, and the challenges she had faced. She spoke of moments when she had felt afraid, of times when she had doubted herself, and of the satisfaction she had felt when she knew she had made a difference. Henry felt inspired by her honesty and courage. Margaret also noticed a change in Henry. She could see the admiration in his eyes, the curiosity, and the genuine desire to understand her fully. Their conversations became more open, more heartfelt, and more meaningful. They laughed together over funny moments from her past, cried together over the difficult experiences she had faced, and reflected on the lessons that life had taught them both. Henry realized that even after 60 years, there was still so much to learn about the person you love, and that the journey of discovery could bring partners closer than ever. Henry began to understand that love was not just about knowing someone's habits, preferences, or daily routines. It was about understanding their choices, their experiences, and the depth of their character. Margaret had always been kind, loving, and supportive, but now he saw that she had also been brave, selfless, and resilient in ways that went far beyond their life together. He felt honored that she had shared this part of herself with him, and he knew that it would change the way he loved her from that moment on. He also thought about the importance of trust in a relationship. Margaret had chosen to keep certain parts of her life private, not because she didn't trust him, but because she wanted to protect their life together. Henry realized that trust wasn't just about sharing everything. It was also about respecting boundaries and understanding the reasons behind someone's choices. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the trust they had built over the years, and he knew that their bond had grown even stronger through this new level of understanding. Henry also reflected on his own life and the ways he had grown alongside Margaret. He realized that he had sometimes been too focused on the routines and comfort of daily life, and that he had missed the extraordinary qualities that Margaret had brought to their marriage. Now, seeing her courage, empathy, and determination, he felt inspired to be more thoughtful, more curious, and more present in their life together. He wanted to be a partner who not only loved but also admired and celebrated the depth of the person he had chosen to spend his life with. Margaret noticed the change in Henry too. She could see that he was more attentive, more thoughtful, and more engaged in their conversations and their life together. She appreciated the way he listened, the questions he asked, and the genuine curiosity he showed about her past experiences. It was as if their relationship had entered a new phase, one where love, respect, and admiration were intertwined with trust, understanding, and shared discovery. Henry also began to think about the lessons their story could teach others. He realized that every person carries experiences, courage, and hidden strengths that might never be fully visible to the people closest to them. He thought about how easy it is to assume you know someone completely, especially after decades together, and how important it is to remain curious, respectful, and open to learning more about the person you love. He felt grateful for the opportunity to witness Margaret's life in full, and he knew that it had deepened not only his love, but also his understanding of what it means to truly connect with another human being. As the days turned into weeks, Henry and Margaret spent more time reflecting together. They shared memories from their past, compared them with the stories Margaret had kept hidden, and laughed at the small coincidences and unexpected adventures. Henry realized that the life they had built together was richer and more meaningful because of the experiences Margaret had had before and alongside their marriage. Her hidden life had added layers of depth, resilience, and courage to their shared story, making it more extraordinary than he had ever imagined. Henry also began to see how Margaret's experiences had influenced their children and grandchildren. Her patience, empathy, and sense of responsibility had shaped the way she had raised their family. He realized that the strength and character she had developed through her secret life had quietly guided their household, creating a home filled with love, stability, and moral values. Henry felt proud of the family they had nurtured together and grateful for the hidden influences that had contributed to their success and happiness. As they continued to reflect, Henry realized that life itself was full of mysteries and hidden depths. People carry experiences, lessons, and courage that may never be fully revealed, and yet those qualities shape the world in profound ways. Margaret had shown him that even a life that seemed ordinary on the surface could be extraordinary beneath, filled with courage, compassion, and quiet heroism. Henry felt humbled by her example and inspired to approach life with more curiosity, empathy, and appreciation for the people around him. By the end of Part 4, Henry and Margaret had grown closer than ever. Their conversations had deepened their understanding of each other. Their admiration had strengthened their bond, and their love had taken on new dimensions. Henry knew that even after 60 years of marriage, there were always new things to learn, new layers to discover, and new reasons to love someone. Margaret's hidden life had not only revealed her courage and character, but it also transformed the way he experienced their shared life, making it richer, fuller, and more meaningful than he could have ever imagined. Henry and Margaret sat together one quiet morning, sunlight spilling across the living room floor, and for the first time in decades, their conversation wasn't about the routines of daily life or the small problems that came and went. It was about them, about their journey together, and about the extraordinary life Margaret had quietly lived alongside the one Henry had known. Henry felt a deep sense of gratitude for the woman beside him, for the courage she had shown, and for the love that had always been at the center of their life together. Over the weeks since discovering the box, their relationship had changed in subtle but powerful ways. Henry felt closer to Margaret than he had in years, not just because he now knew her hidden past, but because he had come to understand the depth of her character. He realized that marriage wasn't just about shared responsibilities or everyday companionship. It was about seeing the true essence of a person, even the parts that were hidden, and valuing those qualities as much as the ones that were visible. Margaret noticed a change in Henry as well. She could see it in the way he listened more intently, in the gentle questions he asked about her past, and in the genuine admiration that shone in his eyes. She felt a sense of relief and joy that she had never quite expected. Sharing these parts of herself had been difficult, and for years, she had worried about how he might react. But now, seeing his understanding, his respect, and his love, she realized that opening this door had not only revealed her past, it had strengthened their present and their bond. They began to spend more time reminiscing together, not just about the life they had shared, but about the moments that had shaped Margaret's journey before she met Henry. She spoke of the people she had helped, the communities she had visited, and the challenges she had faced. Henry listened with rapt attention, imagining the courage it had taken for her to face these experiences alone, and he felt a profound sense of admiration. He understood now that Margaret's quiet strength had always been a guiding force in their family, and that her hidden life had added layers of resilience and wisdom to the home they had built together. As they talked, Henry realized that love was more than comfort, security, or familiarity. True love, he thought, was about embracing the full complexity of a person, accepting their past, and celebrating the qualities that made them who they were. Margaret's courage, kindness, and selflessness had existed long before their marriage, and they continued to shape their life together. Henry felt honored to witness her story, to hear it in her own words, and to share in the understanding that had taken so long to unfold. They also began to reflect on the choices that had led them to this moment. Henry remembered the early years of their marriage, the moments of laughter and worry, the dreams they had shared, and the challenges they had faced together. Now, with the knowledge of Margaret's hidden life, he could see how her experiences had shaped her approach to family, love, and resilience. He realized that the patience, empathy, and quiet determination she had shown throughout their marriage were not just personal traits. They were forged through a lifetime of meaningful work and courageous decisions. Henry found himself inspired by Margaret in new ways. Her life showed him that courage didn't always have to be loud or recognized. It could exist in quiet acts of selflessness, in moments of compassion, and in choices made without expectation of reward. He thought about how he had sometimes overlooked the depth of her character, assuming he knew everything after 60 years together. Now he understood that there was always more to learn, always more to appreciate, and always new ways to love someone fully. Margaret, in turn, felt a renewed sense of freedom. Sharing her story had lifted a weight she hadn't realized she had been carrying. She no longer felt the need to keep parts of herself hidden, and she was grateful that Henry had embraced her past without judgment. She felt that their connection had grown stronger, rooted not only in shared history but also in understanding, trust, and admiration. Their love had deepened, not because they had discovered something extraordinary, but because they had come to know each other more fully and honestly. They began to think about the legacy of their love and the lessons they could pass on to their children and grandchildren. Henry realized that the story of Margaret's hidden life was not just about her courage and kindness. It was about the power of living a life with purpose, integrity, and love. He wanted their family to understand that true strength often exists quietly, in the choices made for the benefit of others, and in the courage to act without seeking recognition.